The city below him breathed like a living thing, a slow, sleepless beast of stone and smoke and hunger. From the balcony outside his solar in the Tower of the Hand, Peter Baelish watched King's Landing darken by degrees. The last red light of the setting sun clung to the broken tops of the Blackwater's burned hulks and the green-stained stones along the shore where the wildfire had boiled men alive. Out beyond, the bay was placid, as if war had never touched it. Lights came one by one in the warren of streets beneath the Red Keep, thin yellow threads in the looming purple dusk. Tiny lights, Peter thought, easy to snuff out, easy to move. The wind off the river tugged at his beard and brought with it the smells of the city he had bought and sold, street by street, for years. Sewage and horse piss, tanneries and cook fires, lamp oil and cheap incense, sweat and onions and rats and blood. It would have been foul to most men. To him, it smelled of coin. Behind him, inside the solar, the fire hissed and cracked. Papers lay in ordered disarray upon the table. Ledgers thick with numbers, letters with broken seals, little heaps of markers placed atop maps where armies and fleets and grain supplies could be counted like so many coppers. The trappings of his office, the tools of his trade. Master of coin, they called him. Peter's mouth curved. They never understood the joke. "Counting coppers, am I?" he murmured to no one. "Yes, my lords. I count them and then I move them. Coins buy bread, bread buys loyalty. Loyalty buys blades. Blades buy thrones." He could feel the city shifting under his gaze, like a great pot brought to a slow boil. It had been simmering since the day Robert died, since John Arryn died, since first blood was spilled over a crown that sat uneasy on any head. The Battle of the Blackwater had not cooled it. Tywin Lannister's victory had only put a heavy lid over a fire that had not gone out. Lids rattled loose in time. All they required was heat. The door opened behind him with a soft scrape of wood. Peter did not turn. He did not need to. The footsteps were light, soft-soled, careful. He had spent half his life listening for steps in corridors, the weight and cadence of them, learning who came before the hand even touched the latch. "You walk too quietly, Varys," Peter said. "A man might mistake you for a thief." "I am many things," Varys's smooth voice replied. The eunuch came to rest at Peter's side, hands folded into his voluminous sleeves. "Though I prefer the term humble servant of the realm." "Do you?" Peter glanced at him, gray-green eyes amused. "Then the realm should thank you more often. The realm does not know I exist. I consider that a kindness to us both." They stood shoulder to shoulder, two small men above a sprawling, ugly city, each thinking himself the only one who truly saw its shape. "You have been counting more than coppers of late, I hear," Varys said softly. "Ships, for instance, new levies, grain stores. When one serves as master of coin, one must count everything. There is never enough of anything." Peter's fingers made a small, dismissive motion, as if scattering crumbs. "Besides, winter is coming. Or so the northern men never cease to babble. Winter is always coming, according to them." Varys's lips twitched. "Yet summer lingers, and the small folk starve all the same. They shout for bread in the streets. Soldiers desert from the city watch. Fleas and fleas, gnawing at the lion's hide. It is troubling." "Is it?" Peter leaned on the stone parapet. "Men without bread riot. Men with swords but no pay become sellswords in all but name. But a clever man can arrange matters so that they riot where he wishes, desert where he wishes, kill where he wishes." Varys turned his head, gauging him. "Not all men are tools, Lord Baelish. Some have wills of their own." "Only fools have wills of their own," Peter said. "The rest have hungers. Hungers can be fed, or starved, or redirected." Spoken like a cook, the eunuch's smile did not reach his pale eyes. "Still, I warn you, the city reeks of unease. Joffrey's cruelties, the Tyrell presence, the whisper of debts not paid. There are too many knives being drawn in the dark. As you say, I count coppers, knives too, and kings." Peter let his gaze travel upward, to where the king's tower thrust its pale stone lance into the darkening sky. "Tell me, my good Varys, have you ever considered what a king is worth?" "A king is worth the peace he keeps," Varys said without hesitation. "Or destroys." Peter's fingers toyed idly with the white rod of his badge of office. "In the markets of Lys, I've seen a girl sold for 3 silvers, and a boy for half that. In Volantis, a clever slave might fetch 30 gold. In Pentos, a shipwright is worth 50. But a king, Varys? A king can sell a kingdom for a kiss, or a whisper, or a lie. A king has no fixed price. He is worth as much as the world will pay for him. And yet," Varys said softly, "a king's life can be ended by one well-placed dagger. An odd bargain." Peter's eyes shone with humor. "Oh, daggers are cheap. It is the hand that guides them that is dear." Varys stiffened, just a little. Peter saw it and was pleased. Men grew careless when they believed their plans were their own. "King Joffrey's wedding draws near," the eunuch said at last. "We shall have a second queen in the city. Another family intertwined with the Lannister lion. New flowers in this particular garden." "Flowers?" Peter smiled thinly. "Thorns more like. But yes, the war is ending, so we are told. The wolf is broken. The stag is dead. The kraken crawls back to its rocks, and only the lion remains, with a rose twined in its mane." He tapped the stone with one finger, each word a small, precise blow. "King, queen, hand, lord of Highgarden, warden of the west, warden of the south." Pretty column of names. Heavy, though. Put enough weight atop a tower, and... He let the thought hang in the air, as if the words were smoke from the city below. "And what do you place beneath this tower, Lord Baelish?" Varys asked calmly. "If you topple your king and his kin, what stands in the rubble?" Peter's smile faded to something thinner, more private. "Oh, Varys, must something stand?" The eunuch watched him for a long moment. In the deepening dusk, his eyes were shadowed almonds. "I mislike chaos," Varys said finally. "It kills the small folk before it touches lords. That is why I once placed my trust in Ned Stark. A dull man, but a just one. And see how well that went," Peter murmured. "You misliked chaos, so you sought to chain it with honor. Chaos bit through the chain and ate the man wearing it. And yet the realm still stands. For the moment," Peter shrugged. "Think of chaos as a market, my dear eunuch. To most men, it is terrifying. The old price is gone, the old certainties swept away. Bread may be dear one day and cheap the next. But to the man who knows where the grain is stored, who has wagons and ships and hungry buyers, chaos is merely a chance to set his own price." "Perhaps," Varys said. "Yet I fear the day when the market burns, and there is nothing left to sell." "You fear much." Peter took his badge of office and slid it up and down his fingers, like a small silver spear. "I prefer to anticipate." "And what do you anticipate?" He looked at the city one last time, at the flickering lights and crooked streets and the faint, far sound of voices rising toward the castle like smoke. "I anticipate a wedding," he said. "And weddings, my friend, are where debts are settled." He left Varys at the balcony and went back to his table. On the maps before him, the realm lay dismembered and flattened, its ridges and rivers reduced to ink. Here was the Trident's blue fork, where he had lain bleeding in the mud as a boy because Brandon Stark had gut him for daring to love Catelyn. Here was the Fingers, where he had been born to nothing, a barefoot boy in a tower that leaned toward the sea. Here was Gulltown, where he had first learned how a purse of gold weighed more than a sword in most men's hands. Here was King's Landing, where he had made himself indispensable to Robert and Jon and Cersei in turn. And here, at the center of the map, a crude little lion crowned with ink strokes sat atop the city's mark. One lion too many. Peter dipped his quill, drew a neat circle around the lion, and then, with a small flourish, turned the circle into a ring of tiny daggers, all pointing inward. A king, he thought, has no fixed price, but they all die the same. The wedding of Joffrey Baratheon and Margaery Tyrell was the grandest spectacle King's Landing had seen in a generation. The city had been scoured, whitewashed, and gilded for the occasion. Poison smells were smothered in rosewater, beggars shoved into alleyways, corpses buried for once rather than left to rot in the gutters. Swords and banners glittered in the autumn sun. Brazen trumpets blared, and bells pealed so loudly that the ravens in the rookery took to the sky in a black storm. In the Red Keep's great hall, the walls dripped with banners. Crimson lions, golden roses, crowned stags, the crowned lion stag sigil Joffrey had claimed as his own. The Iron Throne loomed like a jagged mountain of dead men's swords, while tables groaned under the weight of roast swan and boar and peacock, sugared fruits, wheels of pale and pungent cheeses, towers of sweetmeats. A monstrous pie baked with doves inside waited to be cut. The king sat at the high table, gleaming with gold and jewels, his crown heavy in his golden hair, one hand never far from the sword at his side. Marjorie sparkled beside him in green and gold, all soft eyes and dimples and carefully measured sweetness. Cersei's gown was lion red. Her smile was iron. Tywin sat like a stone carved into the shape of a man, his massive shoulders unbowed by mail or years. The Tyrells clustered like a garden at the king's right, the Lannisters like a wall at his left, and Peter Baelish moved among them as a small gray bird amid crows and peacocks, unnoticed except when needed. Lord Baelish. Marjorie's grandmother caught his sleeve as he passed, her gnarled hand surprisingly strong. Olenna Tyrell's eyes were sharp as needles beneath her blue crystal headdress. I see your appetite for spectacle remains undimmed. Do you enjoy our little show? I enjoy any show where my queen smiles, my lady, Peter said. And you have given the city much to smile at. The small folk whisper that Marjorie is their little queen. You know, they call her the Rose of the Red Keep. Humph. The old woman's mouth pinched. Roses have thorns, lest men forget. They will not, while you breathe. Peter's gaze flicked toward the dais. Though you must forgive me, my lady, when I look upon the high table, I see more iron than rose, more lion than lamb. Olenna's eyes followed his. Yes, she murmured. The boy does love his cruelty. Did you see him make that fool dwarf joust for his pleasure? My Marjorie is not blind, you know. She hears the cries from Flea Bottom. She sees the fear. Cruelty makes weak kings. Weak kings make hungry people. And hungry people make dead kings, Peter agreed. Bread is cheaper than blood, I always say. Then speak to your lions. The Queen of Thorns' fingers dug into his arm. You hold their purse strings, do you not? They will listen. Oh, they listen, he said lightly, to the sound of debt piling upon debt. It is difficult to bake bread when the ovens belong to the Iron Bank of Bravos. That lot, Olenna sniffed. I have dealt with creditors since before your father's father was in breeches. A pinch of gold here, a promise there, a marriage in the right bed. Debts can be smoothed. Blood, on the other hand. Her gaze hardened. My Marjorie will not spend her life soothing the tantrums of a mad boy. Then perhaps, Tyr said, so softly that only she could hear, we should see that she is not bound to one. Olenna Tyrell's hand stilled. In her age-mottled eyes, understanding flickered like a match. You play a dangerous game, Lord Baelish, she said, voice thin. All games worth playing are dangerous. He smiled. And if the board is set properly, one need not lift a blade oneself. Words, my lady. A jewel mislaid. A stone in a shoe. A wedding is nothing but a maze of small chances. Olenna's fingers loosened. Her gaze fell to his belt, lingered on the little crystal phial that hung there as a token of his office, the Master of Coins wine. He had called it with a sly smile when he'd shown her earlier. In truth, it contained but a vivid purple dye meant for marking accounts, or so anyone would say if asked. Just now it was empty. And what is it you want, my lord? She asked. For all these chances you so generously arrange? Me? He opened his hands, all innocence. Why, I want what we all want. Peaceful realm. A wise king. A happy queen. Bread in the streets. Songs at night. Chaos undone. From the dais, Joffrey's high, Mocking laughter rang out as he forced Tyrion to act his mummer's fool. The boy king's face was flushed with wine and power. He flung his goblet at his uncle, red droplets spattering across the rushes like little beads of blood. Olenna Tyrell's mouth became a tight, bloodless line. "Peaceful realm," she said. "Happy queen." "Sometimes the shortest road to peace lies over a corpse," Peter murmured. Her eyes cut back to him, sharp as a knife. "And if that road leads straight off a cliff, Lord Baelish?" His smile was small. "I do not walk off cliffs, my lady. I build bridges while others fall." They parted with nothing more than that, a casual courtesy at a wedding feast. Peter slipped away into the hum and clatter of the hall, his thoughts already several moves ahead. In his mind, he saw a dozen little details. The careful way the cupbearer poured, the path of the wine from cask to flagon to chalice, the jeweled net in Marjorie's hair, and the one stone among many that had been very gently loosened, the softness of lead, the sharpness of a shard. Later, when Joffrey Baratheon clawed at his throat, purple and choking, eyes bulging and blood trickling from his nose as he toppled from his place at the high table, Peter was near enough to see Cersei's panic and Tyrion's frozen disbelief, Sansa's horror and Marjorie's trained mask of shock. "Poison!" Cersei screamed, clutching at the boy's thrashing hands. "He's been poisoned. The imp. It was the imp. Of course it was the imp. Who else could it be, when the king's own uncle had handed him the cup? Who else but the dwarf everyone laughed at, the one Joffrey delighted in tormenting, the one half the city whispered must have killed the last hand, the last king? Who else but the one man Tywin could not quite keep on his leash? Chaos tore the hall. Shouts, armed men pushing through tables, ladies shrieking, the pie overturned, doves flapping madly about, feathers and wine and broken glass underfoot. In the swirling tumult, Peter's hand fell on Sansa's shoulder as if by chance. She started, looked up, eyes wide. "Come," he said into her ear, over the din. "This place is no longer safe." "But, His Grace." Her gaze went to the dais, where Joffrey kicked and writhed, where Cersei screamed for the guards to seize Tyrion, where Tywin's jaw tightened by a fraction as he began to weigh, measure, calculate. "A king who cannot breathe is no grace at all," Peter said. "Do you want to share his fate, sweetling?" Something in his tone cut through her shock. She let him pull her, head bent, hair hiding her face, slipping between bodies while all eyes remained fixed on the table where a boy's life gurgled away in red froth. They emerged into a side corridor, the roar of hysteria muffled behind them. Sansa trembled like a leaf in a storm. Peter kept one hand on her arm, guiding her swiftly through the warren of halls and stairwells he knew as well as any rat in the walls. "Did you do this?" she whispered once, voice raw. "Do you think I would poison my king?" he asked softly. You betrayed my father. Your father betrayed himself. I merely rearranged the pieces." He glanced down at her. Her hair was darker in the torchlight, her eyes huge. "Listen to me, Sansa. In that hall, Cersei saw you drop your cup. She will remember. The Tyrells will remember where you sat. Faces will blur in her rage, but yours will sharpen. You are a Stark in a city that killed your father and your king. Do you think she will let you stand near her son as he dies and not seek someone to bleed for it?" Tears glossed Sansa's eyes, but she forced them back. There was more steel in the girl than most saw. Peter had watched that steel harden with every courtly cruelty, every slap, every humiliation. Cersei had taught the Stark girl more lessons than she realized. "What do we do?" Sansa whispered. "We leave." He smiled at her, that soft, reassuring smile he had practiced so long ago for another red-haired girl who had never learned to read it properly. "Come now. The tide in that hall is turning. Best we slip away before it crashes through every door." In the dungeons below the Red Keep, Tyrion Lannister would soon be thrown into a black cell to await judgment for a king's death. In that same shadowed underbelly, a boy with a pinched face and a broken nose, one of Peter's men, would quietly open a certain door at a certain time with a certain hooded cloak in his hands. Another little coin spent, another little step. By the time Joffrey's body was laid on the cold stone of the Sept, Peter Baelish's ship would be sliding out of Blackwater Bay at the tide's turn, bearing Sansa Stark away under another name. The board was set. The first king had fallen. Now for the others. The Vale rose like a wall against the sky, a sheer blue-gray barrier of mountain and mist. The gates of the moon were small below the great rock of the Eyrie, like a child's toy castle set at the foot of a giant. Snow flecked the higher slopes. Even in late autumn, the air was sharper here than in the south, clean and cold, searing the lungs. Sansa pulled her cloak tighter, staring up from the saddle as their little party wound its way through the steep, narrow track. She had never seen mountains before the Vale. They unnerved her. So much stone, piled so high it seemed they might topple and crush everything below. Magnificent, is it not? Peter rode at her side, his own cloak unruffled by the wind, his expression as neat and composed as always. You can see why men say the Arryns chose a castle no army could ever take. It looks, Sansa searched for a word, lonely. Powerful things often are, Peter said. This was Jon Arryn's seat once, then Robert's in truth if not in name. Now it is Lysa's, and soon. He did not finish. He did not have to. She shivered. Lysa Arryn's letters had once pulled Ned Stark south, into a snare that closed about him like iron jaws. Now Sansa rode north and east because another letter had been written, in another hand, promising sanctuary and kin and a safe nest for the last Stark girl in the care of her mother's sister. Once that might have comforted her, until she met Lysa. The woman who greeted them in the high, airy chambers of the Eyrie had Catelyn's hair and bones, but where Catelyn had been composed, Lysa was brittle. Where Catelyn had been steady, Lysa trembled. Her eyes darted between Peter and Sansa like a nervous bird. I thought she was dead, Lysa had gasped, clutching at Sansa so hard her fingers bruised. All this time, no word, only ravens from Peter and silence from the Trident. Oh, my poor niece, my poor, poor girl. They killed your father. They took your brother's head too. I heard. And your mother, oh, Cat, my sweet cat. Her grief had been a torrent. Her kisses had been wet on Sansa's cheeks. Her hands shook as she stroked Sansa's hair. Later, Sansa would stand by a window and watch the dizzying drop from the Ares heights, and wonder if this was the refuge she had imagined. Your aunt loves you, Peter said as they watched Lysa bustle about the hall, issuing flurried orders for feasts and singers and baubles. She has been hurt many times. Grief leaves cracks for fear to seep into. She is afraid of everyone, Sansa said. She clutched a cup of warm wine in chilled fingers. She keeps saying the Lannisters will come, but no one can reach this place, can they? Not without leave. No army, Peter agreed, but fear rarely marches in lines. Creeps, seeps, whispers. Your aunt sees foes in every shadow, even in her sister's daughter. Sansa flinched. I have done nothing. You breathe, Peter said. You remind her of Cat. You stand where her sister once stood, the beautiful one, the first one, the one Brandon and later Ned loved. Lysa was always second. In the cradle and in her father's eyes and in the bed where Hoster Tully sold her maidenhead to Jon Arryn for a match that would heal the realm. Second wives, second sisters. They remember. There was something inside his voice when he spoke of Catelyn that Sansa could not quite name. Not love. Not exactly. Something hotter, more cutting. Do you remember? She asked, before she could stop herself. Oh, I remember everything. His gaze slid past her, to the snow-flecked sky beyond the shuttered windows. I remember Brandon Stark's sword at my ribs. I remember the look on Cat's face as she watched me bleed. I remember Hoster's smug smile as he sent me away. I remember sitting in the counting house in Gulltown, ink on my fingers and hunger in my gut, while lords who never thought of me again paid me to keep their ledgers from drowning them. He smiled thinly. I remember men stepping on me as if I were part of the floor. That is the thing about floors, Sansa. Someday, if you know where the load-bearing stones are, you can pull one out and watch the men above you fall. The words made her think of another man, Another day, another room high above a city. Varys, with his soft hands and sad eyes, warning her father that the ground beneath him was not as solid as he believed. Everyone in King's Landing seemed to speak of floors and ladders and crumbling stones. In the north, things had been simpler. A man's word had been stone there, not the ground you dug under. "Why did you bring me here?" she asked. "Truly." He looked at her then, directly, as if weighing how much cloth could be cut from a single bolt. "Because you are the key to the north," he said. "Because you are your father's daughter and your mother's daughter. Because every lord in the realm who still dreams of wolves will look to you and see a banner. Because men will kill for a crown, but they will kill much more quietly for a name and a womb." Her cheeks flamed. "I am not. You are a child no longer, Sansa. Men wed girls younger than you every day. Joffrey would have used you as his plaything and then set you aside once Marjorie gave him sons. Tyrion might have treated you with some kindness, but he would have kept you in a gilded cage all the same." His voice softened, like velvet over steel. "I brought you here to give you choices. Did I choose to come?" she whispered. "You chose not to die." He shrugged. "That is more choice than most in King's Landing ever had." Later, in the high, cold darkness of the Moon Door Chamber, when Lysa's jealousy turned shrill and her fingers twisted cruelly in Sansa's hair because she had seen Peter kiss the girl once in the snow, Sansa would remember those words. "You kissed her." Lysa's eyes were wild, the whites showing all around the blue. "Right here in my own hall. You kissed her like you kissed Cat. I saw. Peter's hands were raised, palms open, voice soothing. "Lysa, my sweet, you are Disters." Said, "Don't call me that," she shrieked. "You call me Cat when you fuck me." "I heard it. Don't lie to me. You always loved her. You never loved me." The wind howled up from the sky below as she dragged Sansa toward the gaping blue hole of the Moon Door. The girl felt the world tilt beneath her feet, the air tearing at her skirts. She stared down at her own death, a dizzy morsel at the bottom of a mile of empty air. "Lord Peter," she cried. Lysa's breath was hot and sour at her ear. "I would have given you everything," the older woman sobbed. "I killed my own husband for you. I gave you my son, my bed, my castle, my veil, you ungrateful little." Peter moved with a speed that belied his soft voice and gentle manners. His hands closed on Lysa's shoulders, strong and sure. For a heartbeat, they were all three at the very lip of the door. Girl, woman, man, balanced on the edge of the sky. "You did as I asked long ago," Peter murmured in Lysa's ear. "You poisoned your lord husband with tears of bliss. You wrote a letter to your sister to blame the Lannisters. You began the game, my dear, but you were never meant to be queen." She turned, eyes wide, mouth forming his name. He pushed. The scream was long and thin at first, then snatched away by the wind. Sansa flinched back from the door, heart pounding, stomach heaving. She expected to feel horror seize her, icy and strangling. Instead, what came was silence, a hollow numbness. "She was going to kill you," Peter said calmly over the whistling emptiness. His hands were steady as he closed the Moon Door. "I could not allow that. She killed Lord Aaron," Sansa said, dazed, "at your bidding, and blamed the Lannisters. It was she who started." "The wheel," Peter finished. "Yes, a helpful spark. Wheels must be set in motion, but a wheel that wobbles must be replaced before it flies apart and kills the driver. Your aunt was not stable. She would have bartered you to the first suitor whose flattery soothed her fears." "She was my mother's sister," Sansa whispered. She was going to throw you from that door," he said, and there was a hard edge to his voice now. "Had I stepped aside just now, you would be a red stain on the rocks below. House Stark would be ended in truth. Do you truly mourn such an end?" Sansa thought of King's Landing, of Joffrey's smile when he had commanded Ser Island to fetch ice. The sound of her father's head leaving his body had never left her. She heard it in the crackle of fires sometimes, in the snap of banners on windy days. "No," she said, and her voice surprised her with its firmness. Good. Peter stepped closer, his hand light on her shoulder. Then we shall mourn your aunt properly, and tell the Lord's declarant how she flung herself through the moon door in a fit of grief and madness when she believed you had betrayed her. It will not be hard for them to believe. You will lie, Sansa said. Of course. His lips twitched. Lies are just words that come before truth is ready. In time, no one will recall what truly happened here. They will remember only that Lisa Arryn was unstable, that her sickness grew, that in the end she cast herself from the sky rather than see her son's future threatened. They will remember that I, Lord Protector of the Vale, tried to pull her back, but failed. And me? Sansa asked. What will they remember of me? That you are Elaine Stone, my bastard daughter, Peter said, as if that were the most natural thing in the world. A shy, sweet girl far removed from northern troubles. They will never connect you to the child who once betrothed a mad king. Not until it is time. Time for what? For you to remember you are Sansa Stark, he said softly. And for the North to remember you. He had the Eyrie within the month, and the Lord's Declarant within 3. It was almost disappointingly easy. Men who had bristled at Lisa's caprices and Peter's sudden elevation found it very natural to rally around a weeping orphan boy and his solemn, capable foster father. Peter gave ground where he must, ceded this office and that petty authority to bronze-skinned Royce and gruff Hunter, to Belmore and Corbray, always just enough to soothe their pride, never so much that their hands touched the true levers. The gates, the purses, the letters. He watched them. He learned which wine each lord favored, which whores they preferred when they came down to the gates of the moon during the long winter visits, which of their household knights drank themselves insensible, which squires looked at him with a wary sharpness that might, with time, become dangerous. From among the small folk, the orphans, the hangers-on of the castle, he plucked boys with watchful eyes and girls who moved like whispers and began to feed them. Tell me what you see, he would say to one small lad with an ear like a hound's and a knack for repeating conversations word perfect. Tell me what you hear, he would say to a girl who could slip in and out of chambers without raising a rustle. Tell me who looks at Elaine too long, he would say to another, and when the boy named a certain drunk knight whose hand had strayed where it should not once in a corridor, Peter arranged a hunting accident that left the man's horse with a broken leg and his skull with a matching fracture at the bottom of a ravine. Tears were shed, wine was poured, prayers were said, life went on. Daggers, he thought, did not always have to be drawn to be useful. Sometimes it was enough that men knew someone held them. The Vale ceased to be a nest of anxious lords and became a web, every strand leading back, sooner or later, to him. When winter's first real snows came, long veils of white drawn across the mountains, a raven fluttered into the rookery with a Lannister seal. Tywin Lannister was dead. Peter stood in the rookery, the stench of droppings and feathers thick around him, the letter in his hand, and imagined the Lannister patcher. Yarch on his privy, eyes wide, mouth open not in command but in shock as the crossbow bolts thudded into his chest. He had not been there to see it, but he had been there months earlier, in a whore's parlor in King's Landing, when he had given a frightened girl with dark curls and bruises on her wrists a bag of coin and a set of words. If you repeat these words to the imp when the time comes, there will be more, he had told Shay. Tell him where his father lies at night. Tell him of his father's taste. He is a clever man, Tyrion Lannister. Clever men will use any lever you give them, if the fulcrum is right. Tyrion, pushed to the wall, humiliated on the day of his nephew's death, facing a sham trial and Cersei's glee, had reached for that lever like a drowning man for a rope. The rest Peter could imagine well enough. The secret passage, the crossbow on the wall, the whore in the hand's bed, the father's contempt, the son's rage, a dagger by another hand. But his all the same. Lord Protector? Maester Coleman hovered near the rookery door, shivering in his thin maester's chain. You have news from the south? Tywin Lannister is gone, Peter said. Killed by his own son. The imp escaped his cell with the aid of Varys the Spider and has vanished. Tommen, the younger boy, is king now. Cersei rules as regent. Coleman's face creased. Dark times, my lord. Tywin was hard, but he kept order. Men say the city will grow wild without him. Men are often wrong, Maester. Peter folded the letter quickly, his mind already turning. The city was always wild. Tywin merely weighed it down by force of his name. Remove a weight and things shift. Slides. Falls. He looked out from the rookery tower. Beyond the castle walls, snow fell, soft and steady, cloaking rock and tree and road alike. Beneath the snow, though the roads remained, men would march again. Send word to every lord of the Vale, he said. Quietly, no banners yet. No proclamations, only a reminder. Tell them the lion's head has been severed, and its cub is young. Tell them winter is upon us, and that the north is leaderless. Ask them if they mean to keep their swords sheathed when the realm is so uncertain. Coleman hesitated. My lord, the Vale has been at peace. The lords. Peace is a coin, Maester, Peter said softly. We spend it or someone will steal it. Better to choose the price ourselves. He turned, and as he did his eye caught Elaine. No, Sansa. Standing in the doorway, cloaked and hooded, a scattering of snowflakes caught in her auburn hair. How much more blood? She asked quietly, ignoring Coleman's flustered bow as he withdrew. First King Joffrey, then Lord Tywin. How many have to die for your peace? As many as it takes, Peter said. And when the killing stops? Her gaze was steady now. It always steadied when they spoke of death. Who will sit on the throne then? Why, someone who knows the cost of it, he said and smiled. The letters flew from the eyrie like snowbirds that winter. Some flew west to the Riverlands, where Freys hunkered behind the ruins of their bridges and Manderleys sharpened knives behind smiles. Some flew north to White Harbor and Deepwood Motte, to Last Hearth and Bear Island, bearing cautious half-truths about a Stark girl alive in the mountains, about Bolton treachery, about debt and honor. More flew south to King's Landing, to Casterly Rock, to Highgarden. Not all bore his name, not all bore truth. Some whispered of Ironborn raids greater than they were. Some hinted at Dornish plots that did not yet exist, but would once the seeds were planted. Some spoke of dragons across the narrow sea, 3 now large enough to ride, with riders who remembered their older, fiercer name. Chaos did not have to be pulled from the ground like a weed. Often, it sprouted wherever the soil was thin. In King's Landing, Cersei Lannister, bereft of father and son and surrounded by smiling Tyrells, mistrusted every blossom. They'd have Tommen in their garden if they could, she snarled to Qyburn, her hair tangled, her eyes ringed with sleeplessness. They'd have my son pissing roses within the month. I will not be outmaneuvered in my own court. The Tyrells are ambitious, your grace, Qyburn said mildly. They bring grain and gold, but grain and gold can be taken away. A mother's love, though? Spare me your soft words. I know what they want. She paced the floor of her solar like a caged cat, bare feet silent, hands clenching. They wanted Joffrey tamed. Now they want Tommen tamed. They think to rule through my children. Then perhaps you must show them that your children are yours, Qyburn suggested. That no man may come between you. And when a quiet letter came from the Vale, bearing tidings of certain septons in the city muttering about sin and corruption, and a certain high septon in the streets preaching to ragged crowds about the wickedness of lords, Cersei saw opportunity. Faith, she said, sipping wine and staring at the city far below. The small folk love their gods. They will not love us if we strip the septs bare of gold. But if we restore the faith militant, give them swords and a little power. She smiled, slow and vicious. They will fight the Tyrells and their softness for us. Faith is a double-edged sword, your grace, Qyburn murmured. It cuts where it will. Then I shall direct its first cuts, she said. After that, we shall see who bleeds. Peter's letter had not told her to take that step. He had merely noted the mood, the hunger, the resentments. Cersei, being Cersei, had drawn her own sword. He did not need to place every dagger. He only needed to know where they would fall. Reports came north over the next 2 years like tales from another life. The Ironborn raided the Reach and the Westerlands. Roose Bolton flayed his way to Winterfell and called himself Warden of the North. Stannis Baratheon, grim and unbending, marched on the Wall and Ciel, aimed it for king and god and duty. The Night's Watch muttered of dead things in the woods, of wildling kings and cold winds. In the Vale, Peter fed Robin Arryn sweets and stories, trained his little spies and murderers, and waited. When the snow choked the passes enough that no great host could cross but light horse and small companies could slip by like ghosts, he sent for one of his newest blades. The boy knelt in the solar, thin and wiry, his hair shaved close to his scalp for ease beneath a helm or hood. His eyes were a flat gray, watchful. Peter had found him half-starved in a Gulltown alley, had given him bread and a wooden dagger and asked him if he wished to be invisible or seen. The boy had said nothing, but his hand had closed around the wood like a lover. "What am I?" Peter had asked him later, in the training yard where the boy had slipped between the clumsy swings of larger lads like smoke before a candle. "A knife, my lord," the boy had answered. "In your hand." "Not in mine," Peter had corrected. "No one must see my hand. You are a knife in the air. You fall where I drop you." He had named the boy Shade. "Winter is almost full upon us," Peter said now. "The roads grow hard, but men still travel. Lords ride to war, to council, to feasts. It is a dangerous time to be on the road." "Yes, my lord," Shade said. "There is a man in the north," Peter went on, "who holds a castle that is not his by right. A man who breaks oaths and skins men as if they were rabbits. A man whose continued existence makes it harder for certain other men to rally to a cause I will one day require. He travels light, for he thinks himself feared. Men like that often do. They imagine a flayed man on their banner frightens death away." Shade said nothing, but Peter saw his fingers twitch for a blade that was not there. "You will go north with a merchant caravan that carries furs and iron. You will be a squire, the son of a minor knight, whatever tale best suits you. Somewhere between the Dreadfort and Winterfell you will find your chance. A dark night, a narrow road, a drunken guard. Roose Bolton must die as if by highwaymen's hands. Leave no sign that says otherwise. Roose Bolton." Shade repeated the name once, as if tasting it. "If his bastard son rises in his place, so much the better," Peter added. "Bastards make poor anchors for old loyalties, and a boy like that will make many enemies quickly. He does not need our help in that regard." He handed the boy a purse. "There are other blades in the north," he said. "If chance offers a strike at a fry, take it. Wolves howl more loudly when their worst foes bleed. But the flayed man first." Shade bowed his head, closed his fingers around the purse, and left, one dagger in the air. Peter watched him go, then turned to Sansa, who stood at the window, plucking at the laces of her gloves. "You send assassins now," she said, not accusing, not quite. "I send a boy to escort a caravan," he said mildly. "The north is dangerous. Many things may befall a man on the road. You could tell the Manderleys, the Umbers, the Karstarks, that is, those who still remember loyalty, about Roose's treachery," she said. "You could send letters, call banners, and have them splinter like rotten wood?" He shook his head. "No, they are not ready. Not yet. They still fear the lion, the flayed man, the kraken. The young wolf is dead, and no word of his brothers stirs men's hearts loudly enough to drown their fear. Give them a corpse or two, give them a weaker foe to throw off first, and they will remember what they are." "And what are they?" she asked. "Tools," he said. "Pieces, stones to be shifted. The north is a board. I am merely rearranging." Her mouth set. "My home is not a board. My people are not stones. They will die like stones if we misplay them," he replied. "I mean to see you go back there one day, Sansa, not as a ghost or a girl they pity, but as Lady of Winterfell, perhaps more. For that, the path must be cleared." "Killed, you mean," she said. "Cleared with blood. What did you think war was?" he asked softly. "Songs? In the far north, on a frozen road between the Dreadfort and Winterfell, Roose Bolton's party did indeed meet a band of robbers. At least that was how it was sung later in taverns. No lord wanted to believe that an invisible knife might strike him without warning. Better to imagine that the Dreadfort's lord had simply been unlucky. The wrong turn, the wrong night, a slipped saddle, an arrow through the throat. What truly happened was quieter. A hooded figure slipping from shadow to shadow, counting guards, watching the patter of patrols. A gelding's girth strap sliced in the dark so that Roose's mount stumbled in a narrow defile. A hand over the lord's mouth as he tumbled. A knife pulling his head back by the hair. Another knife opening his throat. No flayed men this time. Only one man, bleeding out on frozen earth while his killers vanished into the woods with purses and sigils both. By the time any of his retainers realized their lord had fallen, they found only tracks and a corpse already stiff with cold. Men muttered of ill omens. Some blamed Stannis, some the gods, some northern ghosts angry at their warden's treachery. Few thought of the Vale. In King's Landing, simmering resentments boiled over as Cersei's games with the Faith militant ensnared not only common whores but lords and ladies as well. Margaery Tyrell spent a month in a cell before Olenna bought her out with gold and threats both, only to see Loras taken in her place. The small folk cheered to see a queen set humble in wool, but the Tyrell tempers burned. "It's her," Olenna hissed behind the silken draperies of a solar, her voice sharp as a thorn. "Cersei, she set these bearded fools on us. I should have let your brother trot off to some battlefield and get himself killed rather than dangle him like bait in front of this family of lions." "Ma." See, Tyrell sputtered dutifully, but offered little. The Reach men had come here convinced they would rule through grain and beauty. They had found instead that the city was a midden with a lion crouched atop it. When word came that the Iron Bank had turned a cold shoulder to Cersei's envoys, but a warmer one to certain inquiries from the Vale, tempers sharpened. Oaths. Peter had written in one letter north to a Reach factor he had once bought out of debt. Oaths and gold. If one is bent and the other withheld, a great house may find it must choose between pride and survival. Pride is heavy, survival is light. In time, even Highgarden learned to count. The years between Joffrey's death and the great councils that would one day follow were not simple. Men marched and returned with half their banners. Others never returned at all. The snows deepened, rivers froze, food grew scarcer. In the Vale, though, the granaries were full. Gulltown's docks never lay idle, not while Peter Baelish held the purses of a dozen merchant houses and quietly purchased rights to their ships. Grain flowed from the Vale's fertile valleys down to the sea, across to the river mouths of the south, up to White Harbor, even back to King's Landing itself. "It is unnatural," Lord Yohn Royce grumbled over a ledger one day in the Gates of the Moon, stabbing a thick finger at the neat rows of ink. "The Vale should keep its own harvest. Winter is upon us. Let the South starve if they've mismanaged their hoards." "And starve your own coffers?" Peter asked mildly. "We sell at a fair price, a slightly fairer one to the north, perhaps, and a slightly dearer one to the south." He flicked a column. "Here, see. The coin we make from King's Landing alone will buy 3 times as much barley from across the narrow sea when the thaw comes. The Vale's stores will grow while theirs diminish." "You count coppers while men freeze," Royce snapped. "I count coppers so our men do not freeze," Peter said. "You may be proud enough to watch your folk die on full granaries to spite a Lannister. I am not." Royce glared, then grunted and looked away. He would never like Baelish. That did not matter. He kept sending his sons and nephews with the grain trains, and some of those sons and nephews came back speaking of the north, of hungry eyes and muttered talk of wolves. Peter listened and wove. When the snows at last began to recede in thin, dirty sheets and the first pale green shoots pushed through the thawing soil, Peter called Sansa to his solar and laid a map of the realm between them. The ink rivers were the same, the mountains were the same, but little markers had moved. Lions had pulled back from some reaches, roses from others. Krakens clung to rocky shores. Stags were little more than memories. Wolves, There were no wolves on the map at all now. Only blank spaces where they might someday be. You once asked me, he said, who would sit on the throne when the killing stopped. Do you still want to know? She watched him warily. I know what I want. Oh, do tell. I want Winterfell back, she said. I want the man who flayed my people dead. I want Freys hung from their own bridge. I want my brothers alive again. But that is... Her throat bobbed. That is not a thing your daggers can do, is it? No, he said quietly. That is beyond me. For now. For now. Her laugh was harsh. Will you send an assassin to kill death itself? Stranger things have happened, he said with a faint smile. But let us deal with men first. Roose is dead. Ramsay will not hold the north long, especially not with Stannis gnawing at his gates and the Manderleys feasting his kin. The Boltons will fall. The Freys will fall. Between outraged river lords and aggrieved northerners, they will not need our help. Then what? The North will choose a new lord. A Manderley, perhaps. A Reed. An Umber. Karstark. Why would they choose me? Because you are Ned Stark's daughter, and the North remembers him, Peter said. Because you are Catelyn's daughter, and the Tully lands will one day need a heart again. Because no matter what name you wear now, you are a game piece no one else on the board possesses. And because I will see to it that when the time comes, the men with swords look to you as the one who fed them when others let them starve. You are feeding them to fatten them for war, she said. Of course. And when that war is done? Her fingers curled over the edge of the map. What do you want, Peter? He studied her. If he lied, she would not fully believe him. If he told the whole truth, she might run, or she might not. She was not the little bird who had once dreamed of golden nights and soft songs. She had learned to watch shadows. I want to climb, he said simply. I have always wanted to climb. From the Fingers to Riverrun's hall, from Gulltown's counting house to the small council, from a lord's floor to his chair. I do not know how to stand still. Climb to what? To the only place left. He let his gaze drift to the little crown sigil on the map over King's Landing. To the seat from which one can move every other piece, if one has the will. The Iron Throne, she breathed. Yes, you are low-born, she said, blunt now in a way the Northern in her cherished. You have no claim by blood. The great houses will not accept you. They barely accept each other. They will accept peace, he said. They will accept full bellies. They will accept a man who can balance their books when their coffers run dry. They will accept, in the end, the king who sits on the throne because no one else was left standing, and who knows where every coin and sword in the realm lies. Men will swallow anything, Sansa, if you feed it to them in small enough bites. And me, you will stand beside me, he said, queen of a realm that owes you its memory. Every northern bannerman will swear to you before they swear to me. The Vale already bends tea. He if not in name yet. The Riverlands will follow the Tully blood. The Reach. He flicked the lion and rose sigil that still clung stubbornly to the south. The Reach cares more for harvests than heraldry. They will bend if the grain flows. Dorne is always itself. But even they will see sense if the alternative is a Lannister or some dragonspawn from across the sea. And if I refuse? She asked. If I say I want Winterfell and nothing more, and I will not be your queen on a chair made of swords? He held her gaze. Then you will have Winterfell. She blinked. You think I cannot give it to you? He asked. I think you never give something without taking something else. Her chin lifted. Ned's daughter in that moment, and Catelyn's too. What would you take? Your silence, perhaps, he said. Your neutrality. Your promise not to raise the North against me, should I sit a throne. Your absence, if you preferred it. There are fat castles in the Vale that would make a comfortable exile. Or White Harbor. Men will beg you to take their hands if they know your name. I need not chain you to mine. She stared down at the map, at the tiny inked symbols that meant so much to so many. Slowly, she shook her head. You want too much, she said. You want everything. and you will break everything to get it. Everything is already broken, he said almost gently. I merely wish to make certain I gather the pieces. She laughed, a small, bitter sound. Then gather your pieces, she said. But do not ask me yet if I will be your queen. I do not know if I will be your ally or your enemy. He inclined his head. As you wish. In truth, he had never expected anything else. Affection was a coin too easily squandered. Fear, loyalty, gratitude, he could buy those. But love, from a stark girl who had seen her house shattered by his lies? That was a luxury he could not afford to rely upon. He would build his road without it. South, Cersei Lannister played with wildfire and faith until the city very nearly burned. The trial of Loras, the shaming of Marjorie, the rise of the High Sparrow and his ragged zealots. These had not been Peter's doing. He had planted seeds, yes. He had whispered in the right ears, sent the right debts to the right desks and bravos, ensured that when Cersei sought funds to pay for her sep's new stained glass and the Faith Militant swords, the Iron Bank was cautious. We do not invest in gamblers, your grace, their envoy had said coolly. Only in those who pay their debts. He had not had to urge Cersei to light the fuse. Her pride was flame enough. When the September of Baelor exploded in green fire and half the city watched in stunned horror as queen and cousin and kin vanished in a single roaring blossom, Peter Baelish stood on a tower in the Eyrie and watched the pale green glare bloom briefly even this far north, reflected in the thin clouds like some vile dawn. Now that, he murmured, was sloppy. Sansa stood beside him, her face ghost pale in the witchlight. How many died? Enough, he said as the echo faded. Enough to make a point. Enough to make every lord in the realm wonder if the woman on the Iron Throne has gone mad. Cersei sits it then, Sansa said dully. Not Tommen. Tommen is indisposed, Peter said. Sons who lose fathers and queens in such ways often find windows enticing. She killed her own son? Sansa whispered. She lit the fire, Peter said. The fall was merely gravity. He tilted his head. Do you pity her? No, her voice was flat. I pity the people who burned for her sins. As do I, he said, and in that moment, oddly, it was true. He hated waste. All those lives squandered in a single flash, when they might have served some purpose on some board somewhere. Burning a sept was like smashing a counting house. It dispersed what could have been invested. But Cersei's madness was useful too. The realm now had a queen crowned in wildfire, loathed by the faith she had not quite exterminated, surrounded by enemies she had created. The Reach smoldered, the riverlands snarled, Dorne seethed. The North was an open half-rebellion against every Southron banner. The Iron Islands raided, dragons flew over Slaver's Bay, if the wilder reports were to be believed, and winter's breath lay on every field. Chaos. Peter folded his hands behind his back and breathed it in like a perfume. Send for the Lords of the Vale, he told his steward, and have the knights make ready. The time for watching is done. Now we move. He marched at last, banners unfurling down the mountain roads like blue and white waterfalls, the Falcon of Erin foremost, but with little mockingbirds stitched on more than one pennon. Bronze Yone marched reluctantly by his side, Lords Hunter and Waynwood and Linderly with their own squires and spears. Behind them, grain wagons creaked, and men in plain cloaks who had never worn a house's colors gripped bows and knives. In the north, he brought his knights to the field at a crucial moment, falling upon the back of a Bolton host that had nearly broken Stannis's lean, hardened lines. Snow flew, horses screamed, and in the end the flayed man fell, trampled into the red-streaked slush as northern throats took up a cry they had not dared use in years. Stark, they roared. The North remembers. Peter rode among them, eyes measuring, mind counting. He gave Stannis just enough victory to keep him useful. A king in the North, even a hard, narrow, humorless one, drew southern eyes. Stannis would bleed the Boltons and the Freys. He would march. He would freeze. He would sit before Winterfell's walls and refuse to yield. A fine distraction. And if, one particularly savage winter night, A blaze began in Stannis' camp, too large to be a mere cookfire, and screaming men ran from their tents with skins aflame, muttering later of sabotage, of fire slipping under canvas, of horses loosed in the dark to sow. Panic? Well, wars were dangerous, especially when a few of Peter's merchants found their way into a camp as woodcutters and armorers, with flasks of oil in their packs. When the snows melted enough at last for ravens to fly freely again, one of the black birds bore a simple message to the Eyrie in a northern hand. Bolton's dead, Frey's dead, Stannis gone, North holds its own, need grain, need safe harbor. Signed in a crude, strong hand, Wyman Manderley. With a second line, smaller, beneath in a subtler script. The wolf lives. Which wolf? Sansa asked, tracing the words with a finger that trembled only slightly. Does it matter? Peter asked. Yes, she said. He smiled. Then let us find out. He sent coin and grain and quiet riders with questions. He asked after a boy on the wall, after another boy among the wildlings, after a girl no longer a girl who wore different names and carried a list of deaths like a prayer. Stories drifted back in fits and starts. A boy stabbed by his own men and vanished into the snow. A bastard named Snow turned lord at Winterfell by northern acclamation. A girl who might or might not have been Arya wed to a Bolton and fled. The tales tangled and blurred. But what mattered was this. The North was no longer in the lion's paw, nor the flayed man's. It was unsettled, unruled by any one unquestioned power. Perfect. He brought his army south then, past the neck, through the sodden, ruined riverlands where charred trees and broken castles still bore Frey and Lannister scars. His banners drew hungry eyes. Men whose sons had died at the Red Wedding watched the mockingbird on his breast and thought of the man who had once stood at Hoster Tully's right hand. Whispers ran ahead of him that he carried a Stark girl with him, that the Vale's knights had broken Bolton and ridden to Winterfell's relief, that he had grain, coin, ships. In Maidenpool, where he had once been a boy with more ambition than sense, he sat in the Lord's Hall and received envoys as if he had been born to a chair, not crawled and clawed his way to it. Queen Cersei demands your aid, said a red-faced man from King's Landing, sweat shining on his upper lip. The faith militant grows bold. Euron Greyjoy rules the seas. Enemies close in on all sides. The crown recalls all loyal lords to stand with their queen. Of course, Peter said smoothly, the crown may rely upon the Vale's loyalty. We march even now. To himself he thought, march to what? To stand beneath a mad queen's walls and be burned like moths before a lamp? Cersei had wildfire now, and little left to lose. No. He would not put his tidy columns of knights beneath those walls to be wasted. Better to let others test that fire. From the Reach came another envoy, thin and anxious, bearing Highgarden's sigil but not its confidence. House Tyrell requests your aid, the man said. The queen on the Iron Throne has murdered our kin. The city starves while she drinks richly. We would make common cause with any who would see her brought low. Grain for bread, swords for justice. Justice. Peter tasted the word. A fine dish, best served warm in my experience. Cold justice is too close to revenge, and revenge rarely feeds armies. He made no promises there either, not yet. He wished to see who would bleed first. From Dorne came only silence. That suited him. Dorne played its own games in its own sands, and rarely committed until the table was set. In all of this, Sansa watched and learned and sometimes argued. They will not love you, she said one night, when a candle guttered in the drafty solar and the map of the city lay before them once more. No matter how much bread you bring, they may obey you, they may fear you, but they will never love you. Love is not necessary, Peter said. Light fear, light respect, and understanding that life under my rule will be easier than life without it. That is enough. You sound like Tywin, she said. Tywin ruled by being necessary, Peter said. I will rule by being inevitable. He came to King's Landing at last not as a supplicant, but as a savior. The city was half-starved. The gold cloaks were ragged, their pay months in arrears. The faith militant controlled half the streets. The Red Keep loomed over a populace that whispered of fires and dead children and mad queens. Vultures circled the walls. His ships, heavy with grain, dropped anchor in the bay like fat, patient gulls. His banners shimmered on the hills. When his envoys rode under a flag of truce to the city gates, they bore neither lion nor rose nor dragon nor stag, but the blue falcon of Aaron and the mockingbird of Baelish both, and behind them wagons creaked under sacks of grain. "We come to feed the city," his herald proclaimed to the crowds that surged near the gates, thin-faced and desperate. "We come to restore order. We come in the name of Lord Protector Peter Baelish, who bears writs from the lords of the Vale, of the Trident, and of the North." "And under whose name do you march?" a gaunt septon demanded. "We will not trade one mad royal for another." "Under the name of peace," the herald said. "Under no crown yet." In the Red Keep, Cersei raged. "He comes as a carrion crow," she snarled, smashing her cup against the wall. "He smells weakness and comes swooping. That little man, that up-jumped nothing, dares to bring armed men to my gates and speak of peace." "You may need him," Qyburn said. "The stores are low. The last shipment from the Reach never arrived. The Iron Bank presses for payment. The Faith presses for concessions. Your Grace, perhaps you might entertain his offers. For now." Cersei's jaw clenched. Pride warred with fear in her eyes. "Let him in," she spat. "But I will not bend the knee to some coin-counting whore's son. He will kneel to me, or I will mount his head on a spike and feed his grain to my own men." Peter climbed the familiar steps to the throne room as if returning age. The hall smelled of dust and fear. Fewer banners hung now. The light that fell through the high windows was thin and sickly. Cersei sat the Iron Throne in a gown black as dried blood, a thin crown like knives upon her golden hair. Her eyes were tired and wild. Beside her, no king sat. Jaime's old place was empty, his golden hand somewhere far from here with its owner. Qyburn stood near the foot of the throne, a pale shadow. The courtiers huddled like crows on a corpse. "Your Grace," Peter said, bowing just enough to be correct. "King's Landing is as glorious as ever." "Spare me," Cersei snapped. "What do you want, Baelish?" "Only what I have always wanted," he said softly. "To serve the realm." She laughed, a raw, broken sound. "You serve only yourself." "In serving myself," he said, "I find it wise to keep the realm intact. A crown atop a pile of bones lacks a certain luster." "Speak plainly," she said. "Very well." He let his gaze travel around the hall. "Your coffers are empty. Your people starve. Your allies have grown quiet. Your enemies have grown loud. The Faith militant occupies half your streets, and the Iron Bank urges a change in management from across the sea. Dragons, real dragons, not the ones on your father-in-law's old banners, have been sighted in the Far East. The North no longer heeds your writ. The Reach sends no more grain. The Westerlands are hollowed out by war." He met her eyes. "You hold the throne with your hands and teeth alone. I offer you something stronger, a bargain." "What bargain?" she asked, but there was a flicker of fear beneath the anger now. "I bring food," he said. "Enough to feed this city for a year, at least. Enough to reprovision your garrison, to keep the gates from being opened from within by hungry men. I bring soldiers disciplined enough to keep order without raping every third woman they see. In return, you will name me Lord Regent and Protector of the realm." The hall rustled. Cersei's knuckles whitened on the throne's arm. "Regent?" she snarled. "Over whom? I am queen. There is no king to protect." "The realm is more than its current occupant," Peter said calmly. "You will remain queen, of course. You will sit the throne, hear petitions, hold court. But the management of the city, its grain, its guards, its debts, that will be mine. I will assume the crown's obligations to the Iron Bank. In return, I will collect certain taxes directly. I will command the city watch. I will oversee the small council. You will have your glory, your grace. I will have the tedious burdens. Cersei stared at him with naked hate. "You would strip me of my power," she hissed. "Leave me a figurehead, a doll on a pile of swords, while you stand behind my chair pulling every string." "Yes," he said. Her breath came fast. For a moment, he thought she would order his head struck off there and then. But then her gaze flicked to Qyburn, to the gaunt faces of her courtiers, to the faint rumble from the city beyond the walls. "You would leave me my crown," she said slowly. "Of course," he said. She sat very still for a long while. The hall was so quiet he could hear the banners whispering against the cold stone. "Very well," she said at last. "You will feed my city. You will command my guards. You will pay my debts. You will be Lord Protector and Regent in truth, while I remain Queen in name. But mark me, Baelish. If you ever step beyond that, if you ever reach for what sits beneath me, I will have you flayed. I will burn you alive. I will. My queen," he said gently. "If ever I reach for what you sit upon, it will be because there is no one left who will stop me." He bent his knee, one leg only, and bowed his head. She took what she thought was his submission. He took everything else. The transformation of kings landing under his regency was slow enough not to frighten, swift enough not to falter. The gold cloaks became, once again, men who were paid on time and given bread enough to march without resentment. Peter replaced captains loyal to Cersei or to no one with men who owed him coin, favors, or freedom from some small, forgotten crime. The street of flour saw grain again. The street of steel clanged with hammers as he ordered new arms for the watch. He allowed the faith militant their septs and their sermons, but quietly controlled the flow of coin to their alms. Zeal without bread burned itself out. He reopened the brothels Cersei had closed, but under slightly different management. The girls had small mockingbirds on their wristlets now, and some of them were not girls at all but eyes and ears and knives when required. Information flowed up from the gutters and down from the rafters. In the small council, he sat at the head by Cersei's leave, listened to petitions, weighed disputes, and smiled. Lord Redwine of the Arbor brought wine. Peter bought it with coin from loans he himself extended in the crown's name. When the bill came due, Redwine agreed to escort his grain ships freely in return for a favorable restructuring. Representatives from the Iron Bank arrived, stiff and cold. He welcomed them as honored guests, laid open the city's books. Not all of them, of course, only the ones he wished them to see, and presented a new schedule of payments that would miraculously ensure both their satisfaction and his control. They left wary but mollified, with contracts in hand signed by a queen and a regent. He summoned envoys from the Reach and the Westerlands, from the Trident and the Vale, from the North and the Dornish marches, and he listened. "Cersei killed my grandchildren," Olenna Tyrell said, her bones more prominent under her veil, her eyes like chips of flint. "I want her dead." "Of course," he said politely, "but not yet." "Why?" she snapped. "You sit at her right hand. You command her guards. A slip, an accident, and we are rid of her. And then," he asked, "then what, my lady? Whom do you seat there? A Tyrell? Tage? A realm will balk at too much reach in its wine. A Lannister cousin? They are weakened. A Targaryen girl from across the sea with dragons and Dothraki at her back? She will burn this city down to its cobbles. No, first we must knit the realm's frayed edges, mend its debts, feed its hungry. Remove Cersei too swiftly, and every lord with a grievance will declare himself king before the ashes are cool. I would prefer one war at a time. And you?" she demanded. "Where do you stand in all this weaving and mending, Lord Baelish? On which side of the loom?" "On mine," he said simply. "In the north, a new king in the north, bastard-born, brother to a dead lord in all but blood, held Winterfell, if the tales were true. In the Vale, Robin Arryn grew from sickly boy to sickly youth under Peter's watch, never permitted too close to any power he might wield poorly. In the Riverlands, the last Freys were hunted like rats by river lords who had at last grown tired of swallowing insult. In Dorne, a quiet alliance was made. Grain for wine, mutual recognition, and a promise that no Lannister would ever sit a throne they bowed to again. gradually, inexorably, every path for aid, every channel for debt, every grain road and shipping lane and lending house began to converge upon one name. When the moment came, it was not the grand coup some might have imagined. It was an illness. Circe began to cough blood. Qyburn did what he could, which was much when it came to horrors but little for the ordinary cruelties of a failing body. Years of wine and stress, the ghosts of wildfire and grief, the weight of a crown worn on a neck never quite meant for it. These did what no army had managed. The queen dwindled in her bedchamber, her golden hair thinning, her once bright eyes rheumy. "Traitors," she whispered to Peter, fingers clawing at his sleeve as he stood by her bedside. "They all want my crown. You most of all. I see you. I have always seen you." He looked down at her, at the wreck of the woman who had once held half the realm in thrall by her beauty and ruthlessness, and felt a small, distant pity. "You were never meant for this," he said softly. "You were your father's daughter. You should have been his heir, not his pawn. But the world is unkind to women who would wear crowns." "Spare me your pity," she croaked. Promise me you will not let them take it. The throne, Lannister seat, my legacy." "Your legacy?" he echoed. "My revenge," she gasped. "On them all. On the Starks, the Tyrells, the dragons, on anyone who ever laughed at me. Promise me you'll burn them all." He thought of Ned Stark, dead because she had played at secrets. Of Robert, dead because she had played at love and poison. Of Marjorie, sweet and smiling, dead because Circe had played at godhood with wildfire. Of all the nameless small folk who had starved while she played at queenship. "No," he said. Her eyes widened. You won't?" "I will not burn the realm for your spite," he said. "I will not pour wildfire over cities just to hear them scream. I will not feed every last peasant to your ghosts so that you can be satisfied in your grave. You have had your revenge, Circe. The ashes are high enough." She tried to spit at him. Came out a dribble of blood. "Hate you," she whispered. "Hate you." "I know," he said, and gently pried her fingers from his sleeve. She died that night, alone, in a bed that smelled faintly of wine and smoke. In the morning, the bells tolled. The realm blinked. There was no heir. Tommen was dead. Myrcella had died in Dorne, the Dornish said, of a Dornish poison. The Baratheon claim had been a lie all along, now loudly acknowledged by those who had once whispered it. The Lannisters were depleted, scattered, their name tarnished even in the West. The Iron Throne sat empty in a hall that remembered too many mad kings and too few wise ones. First, there was chaos. Every great house put forward a name, a claim, a cousin. The Tullus spoke of ancient kinship with the dragons. The Tyrells muttered of marriage ties. The Martells talked of treaties. The Greyjoys muttered of salt and rock. The North, if one could even speak of the North as a single voice, said little, but its silence was heavy. Peter let them talk. He convened a council, not in the old style of conquering monarchs, but as something new. A gathering of lords, ladies, maesters, and even, shockingly to some, representatives of the great cities and the faith. "A great council," Maester Pycelle wheezed, though the old man's coughing fits had grown so frequent that it would not be long before another maester took his place. "We have had such before when the succession was uncertain. When Aegon the Unworthy's brood, well," he coughed more. "In any case, it is not without precedent." "Precedent is another word for habit," Peter said privately to Sansa. "Habits can be bent." They came to King's Landing over the course of months, in wagons and palanquins, on horseback and by ship. Lords and ladies, septons and spymasters, merchants grown rich enough to buy small houses, even a few men from the free cities with interests in Westerosi trade. They came because they were hungry, or afraid, or ambitious, or wary of leaving decisions in others' hands. Peter fed them. He sat at the head of the long table that replaced the Iron Throne for these deliberations, not as king, not yet, but as the man who had kept the city from collapse for the past years. "There is no Baratheon," he said, when talk grew heated over names from that line. No true one. The stag is dead. There are Lannisters, protested Kevin Lannister, one of the few still of any stature. My son, my nephews. The lion has been fed too long, said Wyman Manderley, his vast belly straining his chair. We do not trust a mane matted with so much blood. The North never bent the knee to a Lannister. Another voice growled. We won't begin now. What of Th? Ye Dragon Queen? Asked a Dornish envoy. Daenerys Stormborn has freed cities across the narrow sea. They call her Breaker of Chains. She has 3 dragons. The people might rally to such a banner. The people might also die screaming in Dragonfire, Olenna Tyrell snapped. I've lived through one Targaryen madness. I've no stomach for another. Besides, Peter said mildly, she is yet in the east, and the realm needs a ruler now, not in 5 years when she decides whether to grace us with her presence. And dragons are volatile investments. You speak as if there were no true claim left, protested a young lord from the Stormlands. As if the throne were some chair to be auctioned. In a sense, it always has been, Peter said. Aegon took it by conquest. His heirs kept it through a mixture of fear and tradition. Robert took it by rebellion, Joffrey by lies, Cersei by murder. Legitimacy has always been written by the victors. I propose we be honest about that. Honest? Snorted Manderley. From your mouth. Honesty can be useful, Peter said. The realm does not need another king with an ancient name and no sense. It needs stability, coin, food, laws that are enforced, bandits cleared from the roads, debts repaid, an end to wars waged for a dead man's promise to his mistress. Then you suggest what? Prince Doran's emissary asked, thin brows arching. That we choose a king as we would choose a merchant? By his ledger. Yes, Peter said simply, or close enough. He laid out his case as if it were merely another account to be balanced. He had fed King's Landing when others could not. He had tamed the gold cloaks. He had reduced, if not eliminated, the faith militant successes. He had arranged loans that had kept wars from spilling further into innocent fields. He had secured alliances between Vale, Riverlands, and North that, on paper and in practice, put more men under his indirect command than any living house. He had, in short, kept the realm from tearing itself apart for years, while kings and queens above him raged and burned. I am not of ancient stock, he said. My father was a minor lord on a spit of rock no one cares about. I am no dragon prince, no lion cub, no stag. My only claim to this throne is the simplest, and perhaps the hardest to refute, that I have shown I can rule without destroying what I rule. And what of bloodlines? An old lord huffed. Of the sacred right. Sacred to whom? Peter asked. The gods who do not answer, the small folk who merely wish to eat, or the lords who wish to sit in halls and remember when their grandsires were closer to dragons than to debt. A murmur went around the hall. Some were scandalized, some intrigued, some quietly relieved. And I do not ask you to accept me alone, Peter continued. I am not a fool. The North will not bend the knee easily to a man born on some windy finger of land. The Vale already knows me, but the Reach does not trust my name. Dorne is Dorne, so I propose this, a bargain. A contract, if you will. He turned to where Sansa sat, veiled and quiet, among the Northern and Riverland delegation. Lady Sansa, he said, will you stand? She stood, every eye turning to her. For many, it was the first time they had knowingly laid eyes on a living Stark since Winterfell burned. This is Sansa Stark, Peter said, daughter of Eddard and Catelyn, Lady of Winterfell by blood, last confirmed living child of the last Warden of the North. She has suffered under Lannister cruelty. She has seen the city's worst and survived it. The North remembers her, whether they admit it aloud or not. The Riverlands, too. I propose to bind my house to hers. If you will have me as king, she shall be my queen. A rustle louder now, some faces lit with interest, others darkened. You would set a Stark on the throne, muttered a southern lord. "The north upon all our necks." "You have had the lion upon yours for too long," grunted Manderley. "A wolf's bite might do you good." "And what if the north refuses her?" another asked. "The north has already sent word," Sansa said, her voice clear. "We may not always agree on what we want, but we agree on this. No more Lannisters, no more Freys, no more flayed men, no more kings who never walk the snows they tax. If I sit a throne, I will carry the north with me." "Bold words," said a Tyrell cousin, "from a girl who once dreamed of golden-haired princes." "That girl is dead," Sansa said. Peter watched her, and in that moment, even he could not quite tell whether she spoke as his piece or as something else entirely. The arguments lasted weeks. Old grudges were aired, new fears voiced, the faith wished to say. He offered them one, carefully limited, enough to make them feel included without giving them swords. The cities wished charters. He promised them under a crown that would guarantee trade rights. The Iron Bank wanted assurances. He gave them contracts. The great houses wanted safety for their names. He offered marriages, titles, guarantees written in ink and sealed with wax and, more importantly, backed by the quiet threat that the man who controlled every ledger could make their debts disappear or double at will. In the end, it was not love that won him the throne. It was weariness. "We are tired," Olenna Tyrell said bluntly at the last session. "Tired of mad lions. Tired of wolf pups thrown into lion dens. Tired of dragons across the sea we cannot see but must somehow fear. This man has kept our ledgers balanced and our granaries from burning while the rest of us tried to kill each other. I mistrust him, but I mistrust the alternative more. Crown him, let the mocker sit on the swords. If he cuts himself, so much the better." There was laughter, thin and strained. One by one, the hands rose. Not all. Dorne abstained, waiting to see if this new order lasted long enough to matter. Some storm lords grumbled. A few minor houses stomped out, muttering of alleged Imaki and old ways. But enough hands rose from North and Vale, Riverlands and parts of the Reach, parts of the West, the Crownlands, the cities, the Faith, the Iron Bank. Enough that the decision could be dressed in the clothes of consensus. Peter Baelish was crowned in the September of Baelor on a cold, clear morning, under skies scrubbed of wildfire smoke. The throne was the same knot of twisted swords it had always been. The crown was a new thing, fashioned hastily from gold and silver with a mockingbird worked small and subtle among a ring of 7-pointed stars. As the High Septon lowered it onto his head, Peter felt the weight as a physical thing, heavier even than he had imagined. For a moment, he thought of all the floors he had been stepped on, all the rooms he had been in the corners of, all the tables he had served at. Now there was no floor above him. Only the distant arch of the vaulted ceiling and the cold air. "Rise, your grace," the Septon intoned. "Rise, King Peter of House Baelish, first of his name, King of the Undulls and the Royner and the First Men, Lord of the 7 Kingdoms and Protector of the Realm." He rose. The hall's roar was not the lusty cheer that had greeted Robert, nor the half-hearted clapping that had greeted Joffrey. It was a mixed sound. Some shouts of approval, some murmurs, some contemplative silence. Sansa stood beside him, a simple circlet already in her hair. When she knelt and the crown was set upon her head as queen, the northern delegation's shout of "Stark" was the loudest sound in the hall. Later, when the feast was done and the courtiers staggered or slunk off to their chambers, when the torches guttered low and the Iron Throne sat silhouetted against the last embers of the hearth, Peter walked alone in the empty throne room. His footsteps echoed. He mounted the steps and sat, carefully. The old swords creaked faintly under his weight. Many kings had sat here, none like him. He had lied. He had betrayed. He had whispered and bribed and blackmailed. He had sent boys to kill men they had never met, had let women burn in fires he could have perhaps diverted, had watched cities starve and only fed them when the hunger served him. The crown on his brow was minted from 1,000 small deaths and a few great ones. King through lies, assassins, and controlled chaos, he thought. A boy from the fingers on a throne of blades. His hand rested on the throne's edge. Below him, beyond the walls, The city murmured in its sleep, breathing. He could feel the realm like a great, unsteady animal under his hand now. The pulse of it in the ledgers and the letters, the grain measures and the troop counts, the mutters of merchants and the songs of taverns. He had climbed to the top of his ladder. There was no higher rung. And yet, there will always be another board, Sansa said from the shadows. She stepped out, candle in hand, the light drawing gold from her hair. Another game, another ladder. You read my thoughts, he said, mild. They are not hard to read, she said. You are thinking of dragons, of ships on the horizon, of northern lords who nod and smile and plan what they will do if you stumble, of Dornish princes who wait, of free cities who watch our trade routes. Of you, he said. She inclined her head. Of me. You have what you wanted, Peter. You are king. What will you do with it? Rule, he said, as I have always ruled, quietly, efficiently, with as little blood as possible. That last, she said. You might consider more carefully than you have before. He smiled faintly. You disapprove of my methods, Your Grace? I disapprove of waste, she said. You taught me that. My father died for honor. My mother died for trust. My brother died for love and northern pride. You taught me that all those coins were thrown away for nothing. If we must kill to keep this realm from tearing itself apart, let us do it with more care. You would guide my hand? He asked. I would stay it, she said, when I can, and push it when it must fall. He looked at her for a long time. It occurred to him that he had climbed alone all his life. Even when he thought of Cat, he had imagined her as a prize, a destination, never a fellow climber. Sansa was not Cat. She was something new, forged in other fires. Very well, he said. Stand at my side, then, not merely as a banner for northern men, but as something sharper. A queen, she said. A partner, he said. She smiled, and it was not the smile of a girl who dreamed of golden nights. Then let us see, she said. If a king made of lies and knives can build a realm that does not fall the first time someone honest knocks on the door. If someone honest ever reaches it, he said dryly. They will, she said. They always do. Honest men and women are stubborn that way. They crawl out of graves. They march from walls of ice. They ride dragons. They walk out of brothels and castle kitchens. They are small folk who simply wish to live. You cannot buy them all, Peter, nor kill them all, so you had best learn to rule them. He thought of the boy he had once been, small and hungry on the floor of a lord's hall, watching other men eat. Honest in his desire, at least. He had not been born a liar. The world had taught him that language. Perhaps, he said softly, they will teach me another. She snorted. You? Doubtful. But we shall try. They stood there together in the quiet hall, king and queen, liar and learner, assassin's master and murdered daughter, north and south bound in an uneasy clasp. Outside, winter still muttered beyond the walls, and across the sea dragons stirred, and in the far cold distant places, other threats that knew nothing of ledgers or crowns gathered. Chaos was not gone. It never would be. It was only, for the moment, controlled. Peter Baelish sat the Iron Throne, and for the first time in his life, the climb was done. Now came the balance. He smiled in tea. He dark. Very well, he whispered to the empty hall. Let us see how high we can build without letting it all fall.